What's up, everybody, and welcome to the MLS Power Rankings show for Week 13. I am Andrew Wiebe, as always, with the one, the only, the armchair analyst, Matt Doyle, and just one cat in the picture right now. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, this is also live on Twitter Spaces every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and you can catch it on the MLS Today podcast feed, where MLS After Dark lives, as well as what else? MLS Today at 11 a.m. Eastern every single day on Twitter Spaces with David Goss. All those go up. 7 days of MLS content. 7 days of MLS content on the MLS Today podcast feed, and of course, you're also probably subscribed to Extra Time and the Call Up, and if not, you should be. We go through 10 teams, rapid fire on Tuesdays. Let's get it started. Doyle, everybody can get the MLS Power Rankings at MLSsoccer.com every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we start at 23. Down 4 spots from 11 are the Columbus Crew. LAFC come to town. LAFC leave town 2-0 winners. We talked in our little intro before we went live here about rain delays, and there was a significant rain delay in this one, but the delay could not delay the inevitable for the Crew. It feels a little bit like this season is slipping away slowly, Doyle. We had a question here from Massive317 that says, which is closer to reality for the Crew, playoffs or wooden spoon?
Playoffs. Like this team, like what? They're still only a few points out of the.
There are 13 race? Teams within 5 points of the spoon right now. It is packed up. There is no truly stinker of a team this year so far, at least. No FC Cincinnati. No offense to FC Cincinnati from the last 3 years.
I still think that this team has the bones, like the underlying structure of a playoff team. They're playing really poorly now. One win in their last 9. But look, Caleb Porter came out after this game and he says, I thought we were the better team for 60 minutes. And he's not wrong. Like he's absolutely not wrong. The Crew were a better team for an hour against an LAFC team that we all think is one of the best in the league. So it's not, like you said, they're not completely flailing. What they're not doing is adjusting at all. They have not been able to compensate in the middle of games. They're not getting production from their wingers. They tried to address that over the winter by adding Yaya Boa, who's been replacement level or so. Derek Etienne had some nice moments back in February and early March, but he hasn't really done that since. So they need to address issues there. They're obviously not getting as much out of the number 9 spot as they had hoped. They're not getting as much out of the number 10 spot as they had hoped. Back in the first 3 weeks of the season, we were talking about the Crew every single week because Lucas Zelarayan was banging home a golazo every single week. And what did we say? Like, okay, this is great. He's amazing at this, but this is not sustainable. It dries up. And we've seen it dry up, and they haven't come up with answers. 3 of their next 4 are on the road. They're in a tough spot. I still think that this team is more likely to end up between 45 and 50 points, which is right on the fringes of the playoffs, than they are to end up 25 to 30 points, which is wooden spoon.
That to me, well, look, first of all, this game is an outlier in one big sense, which is, and you're watching it on YouTube right now, 2 goals came from Darlington Nagbe turnovers. 2 instances of Nagbe being loose with the ball in the middle of the park. Like, that's not something that you often say about Darlington Nagbe. So I don't think that's necessarily replicable or won't be happening regularly for this team. But I think a lot of it comes down to the summer. What can Tim Bezbachenko do to reinforce? I mean, you trade Jesse Zardes with one thing in mind. Well, yeah, to get value, but 2, to open up the roster spot to go get a 9 that you hope can work a little bit better with Zelarayan, bring out the best in him more, but also bring out the best in the wingers. Like, this is sort of a broken record conversation around this positional group, whether it be Luis Diaz, whether it be Yaya Boa so far, Pedro Santos, who got moved to wing back. Like, they need to get more out of players not named Zelarayan. I would like to see Aiden Morris play maximum minutes the rest of the way. I think he can be sort of a different change of pace and a different type of player in the midfield. But you're right. Like, they have the horses. So now what? Like, 3 out of 4 on the road, you say they're going to be closer to the playoffs, but that's a recipe to get closer to the spoon. Like, what changes and how?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I would like a lot of it is, I think, less to do with changing the shape tactically or even changing the personnel, though I agree with you that getting Aiden Morris in there as a change of pace is a good idea because the team literally plays faster when he's on the field. And that's one of the things that jumped out to me when I pulled all those numbers on Sunday morning, the second spectrum numbers. Like, the Crew advanced the ball upfield as slow as anybody in the league. They're ponderous the way they play. So they have to get out there and actually, when they exploit a team, they have to hit that with more intentionality. Like, once it reminds me of that.
Can you boil that down to like which players sort of slow the?
It's Nagbe.
Is it just Nagbe though?
Nothing is ever just one player.
Sure. But Zelarayan to me has some of those attributes as well.
I mean, with Zelarayan, it's more about trying to hit a home run with every pass.
Too much, correct?
Yeah. With Nagbe, it's it's funny because in the context of this weekend, but like, he's so risk averse that he does not advance the ball quickly and take the type of risks that you need to take if you're going to get your wingers consistently into good spots, if you're going to get your number 9 running behind the defense. Now, we all know that's not an every week type of thing. Some weeks he can be absolutely phenomenal. He has had games. I mean, the Campeones Cup against Atlanta, or against Club America a couple of years ago, he was the best player on the field. He looked like a $40 million player. Like, Nagbe can have those games where he's just relentless and driving forward and not afraid of losing the ball. But this year, he's been so afraid to lose the ball that Columbus are always taking the long route around the opposing midfield. And it's putting them in positions where they've just been super easy to game plan for. They're never attacking against a scrambled defense. And so their attack is suffering, and then their own defense has just not been anywhere near as good as it was 2 years ago.
Might explain something about the lack of productivity with the wingers as well. You said 3 of the next 4 on the road. It's actually 5 of the next 7. Next 5 at Atlanta, Charlotte at home, at RSL, at Toronto, Philly at home, and then the next 2 on the road at Chicago and DC. That is the Crew at number 23 in these power rankings, down 4 spots from 19. Let's keep it rolling. Jessica, request to jump in. I've sent you a couple requests here, so we can hit the mic at the bottom left of the app here. We'll get Jessica Charman in to talk Charlotte. They're 19, up 3 spots this week after a home win. Those are pretty common for them against the Vancouver Whitecaps. You listen to Jessica on the radio broadcast for Charlotte. She's a color commentator. Jessica, welcome to the Power Ranking Show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Delighted to be here.
Oh, man, home cooking for Charlotte. The roadside, we'll figure that part out. But even if it was a little ugly, even if they were down 1-0 2 minutes in, this Charlotte team under Miguel Angel Ramirez finds a way to get it done at home. Outside the fans, we know the fans are wonderful. Tactically, what do you see at home, vibes-wise, attitude-wise from this team? What's different than on the road?
Well, firstly, I think it's really important that you mention the fact we went down early, second-minute goal, horrific error from Christian Fuchs. But this was something we hadn't seen from Charlotte FC. We'd never come back from a losing position in a match to come back with 3 points. And I think that's huge. It shows that we've had a mentality switch lately where we're able to dig deep and come back from pretty poor circumstances. When you mention the fact it was a late goal, we grinded until the end. We're moving now into a position where we look like we can score goals. We're having a more aggressive formation at home. I think that's one of the biggest things. When we're at home, we don't play scared, at least. Montreal, maybe a different picture. But Vancouver, we didn't play scared. It was an improvement. And as we've added some wingers, we've got Jozwiak, we've got Shinyashiki, who I think is one of the best signings internally in the league that you're going to see. And we're playing like a more aggressive side. And I think that's important. And Miguel wants a 4-3-3, and he's starting gradually to be able to use that formation that he wants to see.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because it's what he was known for before he came to MLS. But obviously, the roster build with this team has come around, I think, a little more slowly than he would have liked and some of the fans would have liked. But as you said, it seems to be angling towards a 4-3-3 right now. I think the front line kind of explains itself with the personnel. What is the midfield balance going to look like? Like, what is that starting midfield going to be?
And I think that's really tough when you talk about the starting midfield because it's full of youth. When you look at players like Jordi Alciva, when you look at players like Ben Bender, they're still very young, they're inexperienced, and you see in their play, they have moments of brilliance where they take on a player, where they build where they hold their position correctly, but they also have moments of immaturity. I look at Ben Bender, who got off to a cracking start with his 3 assists. Since then, he's had moments of brilliance. He's getting consistent minutes, but you can just tell he's struggling to adjust a little bit to the speed of play in MLS. He's been used to NCAA, where you get more time in the ball, where the spaces stay for longer, and he's struggling a little bit with that. So I think we're going to see more rotation in the midfield than maybe we would like. One player that I say, if he has a good day, Charlotte FC has a good day, is Brian Bronico. I'm not sure how many people, when he was signed for Charlotte FC, would have thought that he would be such a pivotal player in that midfield, but he offers the discipline and he offers that little bit of nastiness that a lot of our players don't necessarily have, which has given us a bit of reputation around the league where oppositions haven't liked the niggly battles that we get into. But a player like Brian Bronico is so vital in the midfield that way.
I want to follow up on Ben Bender because you mentioned he came out of the gate smoking. He had 3 assists early. He was playing wider early. Now, granted, that was more of a shuttler in a 4-4-2 diamond. You're speaking of him as, I assume, one of the 8s or even a 10 in this 4-3-3. Is that what his future is for this team, playing on the interior like that?
See, I really don't know where he fits best, because when he was playing on the width, and that wasn't something we saw him in the NCAA doing all the time, I think he looked more comfortable. As he's moved inside, he doesn't look as natural in that ball playing position. He doesn't look as comfortable in possession, and he doesn't necessarily have the vision and speed of the vision yet. I'm not saying he doesn't have that in his future, but right now, because he takes one too many touches, because he holds on to the ball for a little bit too long, when he tries to find those passing lanes, the defense have already read it. And that's causing a lot of turnovers. That's getting players frustrated. But I think he has a bright future ahead. We've just got to figure out where he belongs right now in this system, particularly if he's not able to adjust quick enough with the speed of play, because it's forcing some frustrating turnovers. Now, if there's one manager I want in charge when there's a young player on the pitch, it's Miguel Angel Ramirez, right? You can tell he's got that experience with the academy level. He wants to protect the young players. And I look at that special moment against Vancouver where he took time to go talk to Max Anker, who I think deserves a notable mention for coming up as a 17-year-old into an MLS match and having a decent performance. But Miguel took time out to even go to speak to him because he understands how important the youth is and how brave it can be to step on the pitch as a rookie.
Miguel, one of the most engaging managerial personalities in the entire league so far, whether it be his quotes in preseason,
not even
ability
just preseason. Have you seen the Harry?
I know
the Harry Potter quote was quite something as well.
He is he's a special man. Let's get a quick scouting report from you on Joswiak before we get you out of here. Brought in as a DP. They chased him for a long time, had an ankle injury that sort of delayed it. Had a moment that made instant replay with a little techers. We didn't think it was a PK, but he's starting to show flashes. What's the internal impression of him so far?
I think you're right. Flashes is the word. Not quite consistent enough yet, but moments of brilliance. Love that he has tight ball control. Love that he wants to take on players, but just not quite consistent enough with that first touch right now to set him up. I've followed a lot of Derby fans who say that that's kind of what they've seen of him. He has moments where he'll take a player on, he'll nutmeg them in the area, but then it's not always like he has that consistency or confidence to do it time and time again. I wonder with the signing of Kerwin Vargas, the Colombian out of Portugal, he came on and gave us, 15 minutes of marvelous play, a lot more swagger, a lot more confidence, a lot more fearlessness. Is that a player now that's going to add squad depth and competition? You see Shinya Shiki coming in, 2 goals, but also some brilliant play. I have to wonder if that competition is going to be a good thing in terms of Joswiak. Is it going to keep him on his toes, or is it maybe going to shut him off a little bit? And if his mentality is right, is that going to force him into a player that's not going to show his full potential for us?
Right now, Charlotte, 16 points. Points per game would have them below the line, but hey, doesn't matter. They have the tiebreaker to get them above the line. 7th in the Eastern Conference right now. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Jessica,
Not
it's
you.
been a pleasure.
Not you.
Yeah, no, I picked him to fall below the line. So we won't put you in that position yet. It's too early, just a third of the way in. But it's been a joy to talk to you, Jessica. We will do it again real soon.
Hey guys, thank you.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. Minnesota is our next team on the Power Rankings show for week 13, 17 in these Power Rankings, up 3 spots from 20. They won on the road in Dallas. That's a pretty impressive win Doyle, not many winning in the state of Texas overall these days.
No, Dallas have been good this year, and for Minnesota to come out and get 3 points in this one, they had another obviously very big game from Dane St. Clair, and he's been doing that a lot. This is coming on the heels of getting a 1-1 draw at home. Not great, but a 4-point week on the heels of a 3-game losing streak. I think there's probably a big exhale in Minnesota's camp right now. At the same time, if you watch this game, this is not a team that's exactly clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah. What is not clicking? I mean, Robin Ludd is apparently an issue midweek here in the Open Cup for them. He's also now they're home against Union Omaha, by the way. He's also now their all-time leading goal scorer, which had some of their other signings. Luis Amarilla hit his goal targets. He would actually be the all-time leading goal scorer for Minnesota United. What is Adrian Heath tinkering with right now, or not tinkering with, and what could change for this team? And if anything, it sort of just feels like they're stuck in the same old to me.
Yes and no, right? I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. He has his team pressing, and we started to see some of that last season. If you think back to the first half of last season and the end of 2020, they were just pure counterattacking. But he started them pressing last season, and they're going all out now. Other than Philly and the Red Bulls, they're the highest pressing team in the league.
Oh, interesting. So I did not know that.
Yeah, he's trying to get them into spots where they win the ball up high and are only two passes away from putting in the back of the net. So he has tinkered with that. He's also had to tinker with personnel, and he said it, Wiebe, Amarilla's on the bench. That's a DP center forward. He is the second DP center forward they've signed who's on the bench. The reason Robin Ludd is scoring so many goals is because he's playing as their 9, but he's also their best winger. And oh, by the way, he's their best winger because Franco Frangipane has not been anywhere near as good as he was last year, anywhere near as good as his resume says he's supposed to be. So it's there's a lot of stuff that guys have just fallen off. And what I wrote in this week's column was that Dane St. Clair is not just running away with goalkeeper of the year. He should be seriously in MVP discussions. He's been spectacular. If you look at the underlying numbers, he is saving this team half a goal a game. That is the highest of 1,000-minute sample. That is the highest level that anybody's ever done it in the past dozen years that any goalkeeper has ever done it. That's better than Matt Turner's best season. That's better than Andre Blake or Nick Raimondo or Stephen Fry's best season. Half a goal a game. So him playing at that level has been able to sort of paper over a lot of the cracks that I think otherwise would be showing with this team.
I do wonder with Minnesota and these two DPs. At some point, you either have to get the most out of them or get something out of them, I guess more accurately, or you have to find roster relief and flexibility to go change your team. Those spots don't grow on trees. It's a finite number. You can't sit around and have those guys not play forever and just shrug. I don't think if you want to reach the level that they've been at the last couple of years or on the precipice of in the playoffs, and with Reynoso's prime years in front of you. So a big summer for Minnesota, I think, to figure out either whether they're going to get something from those guys or they're going to move on and how they might move on from that and what comes next. But a good breakdown here. Though I was educated on the pressing side. I did not realize that for Minnesota so far. It's understandable why they're playing some, let's say, more mobile guys at that other winger spot opposite of Fragapane with Ludd as well. All right, let's get the LA Galaxy at number 16, down 7 spots from 9. That makes sense. Houston Dynamo came to Carson and sort of stomped him. Josh Guesman here from Corner of the Galaxy. That was not pleasant, I'm sure, to watch. Josh.
I don't know. It had some entertaining aspects. The two goals from Houston in the second half were absolute bangers, so that was fun. But it's not often you can say the team got dominated and played off the field when they had 73% possession. So, that's something interesting to look at.
What's the laundry list of issues right now in your eyes? And maybe it's not all issues. Maybe you got some positives for us too.
No, I don't think there's a lot of positives. The only thing that the main thing that I think the Galaxy need to focus on, and they've seen it. When Victor Vasquez got hurt and went out, they stopped creating chances. That's tough to say that you're reliant on a 35-year-old, midfielder that's going to be your chance creator. But for the LA Galaxy, that has 100% been the case. He gets hurt, he goes away. The LA Galaxy haven't created chances. And when they are creating chances, they're not finishing. So his return a little bit against Minnesota came back with the last 20 minutes in that game, and you saw the Galaxy start to get some of those chances back. He started in the game against Houston, and outside of the goal, the LA Galaxy allowed to Houston in the first 11 minutes there. That rotated roster with Victor Vasquez out there actually created some good chances. They haven't finished, which is another huge problem, but they weren't creating chances before that. So the big problem for the Galaxy and for Greg Vanney is trying to figure out how to generate those chances, because if Victor Vasquez isn't on the field, nobody else is generating those.
That is by way of saying that Efra Alvarez has been disappointing. I think there was a lot of hope coming into this season, especially after he had a good preseason by all accounts, that he would take a big step forward. It seems to me like he's been put into spots where you would expect him to be able to create chances, whether it's an inverted winger or even as a number 10, as he's played for a few games with Vasquez out. I interrupted you then. Please go on.
No. I think you hit it on the head. There were guys who were expected to pick up the slack for Victor Vasquez. Victor's not supposed to be the guy who was going to be a 90-minute chance creator for the Galaxy. There's supposed to be Douglas Costa, and Costa on the outside trying to use some of his individual talent that surely was supposed to be there, and we haven't seen that. We've seen Efrain Alvarez, who has been given a lot of minutes and a lot of time, and as you said, put in good positions to be able to create those chances. And I'm not going to say he hasn't created any chances. He has. But his shot decision-making, his cross decision-making, his ability and constant need to dribble out of bounds over the touchline, all of these things have sort of led to the fact that the Galaxy haven't been scoring goals and haven't been creating chances. And the biggest, most glaring issue for him right now is the fact that he has a very limited right foot, and his continued incessance to run around his right foot has cost the LA Galaxy probably 2 goals in the last 2 games.
It's rough. So then what is the answer? Besides, get Victor Vasquez back and hope he has 1,800 minutes in him from here on out. There has to be something else.
Yeah, he played 413 minutes so far this season, and I after the game against Houston, I asked him, basically how fit does he feel like he's going to be, because I can't see the LA Galaxy relying on anybody else. Sasha Kljestan is another guy who can come in and really be a game changer for them. Again, 35, 36-year-old midfielder, not exactly the guys that you want to be out there playing 90 minutes, and with Kljestan hurt with a hip flexor, that's not an option right now, probably until after the break. So the option here is to find a playmaker, somebody who can create. Douglas Costa's played at the 10. That hasn't worked. You talked about Efrain Alvarez moving in inside at the 10. That hasn't worked. So it seems like the LA Galaxy are primed for a summer pickup of somebody creative. But when you talk to Greg Vanney, he talks more about defensive midfielders and moving Mark Delgado into that position. And I'm not sure Delgado really played that role at Toronto, and I don't expect that he's going to play that role for the LA Galaxy coming forward. So maybe a bit of a misdirect from Greg.
How disappointed does Greg have to be with the lack of production from literally every winger on that roster?
Oh, it's just giant black holes of nothingness coming from anywhere. Grant Sear, I think, probably doesn't get enough shtick for where he's at. He has a couple assists. Cabral could have a couple assists too if Chicharito was finishing as well. But the bottom line is that there's no goals coming from anywhere up on that front line right now. Costa has 2 goals. They're both from set pieces. Alvarez has, I think 1 goal, and it's a worldie, which is he's usually good for every season. So, yeah, the lack of offensive production is putting the defense under a ton of pressure. And the defense, while very stout to begin with, has had to rotate, had some injuries, and had some other things. And maybe with the downgrade of Ryan Raveloson in midfield, and he's certainly not living up to what I think the LA Galaxy thought he was, or how he was playing last year or at the beginning of the season, has really created this soft middle that has been easily exploited by fairly simple passes.
What's the realistic in your mind, and realistic's the key word, sort of end of season for this Galaxy team?
I think they're right on the line. I know that sounds crazy after complaining, about all the things that really aren't working. I feel like the chances are there, so the finishing has to come there. Their expected goals were actually fairly similar to Houston, even though Houston had 3 goals and the Galaxy had 0. So it's about finding some of that finishing, quality. I think Chicharito has that. I think there are some other guys here who will get some goals. I think Costa is probably one of those guys that you have to expect to get goals from. So right along that playoff line sort of seems to be where it's at, because the defense isn't as bad as the last 2 games at home for the Galaxy, but it's probably not as good as maybe everybody had hoped for.
All right, go listen to Corner of the Galaxy. Nobody covers that club better than Josh and Kevin. Josh, thank you for your time, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's keep it rolling. We're going to the opponent who came in to Carson and did the whooping. That's the Houston Dynamo. Doyle, and in previous seasons, if the Dynamo had lost 3 straight games, you might think, okay, well, they're just going to drag it in. Like, this is basically it. Pack it in. The season's over. They're not going to the playoffs. Well, they won. They won twice in the next 3. The losses to Seattle. That ain't bad.
No, it's not.
They have 2 away wins. That's more than they had in the past 2 years combined. And they're getting Ache soon. There is reason for real hope and optimism in Houston, I think.
I mean, it's not that soon that they're getting Ache. I think it'll be another
soon
8
enough.
games.
Soon enough.
All right, soon enough. No, like they have some guys who are who are proving to be very opportunistic in space. And that includes Sebastian Ferreira, who scored 2 goals and is the MLS Player of the Week. Their whole cadre of wingers, it's the opposite of LA. We were just saying how LA's wingers have provided nothing. Houston's wingers provide two-way effort and penetration basically every game out. What they don't have is a ton of midfield balance. They generally speaking need Darwin Quintero out there in order to be a high-level chance creation team. Now, they didn't have him this weekend, and they were able to, counterattack the Galaxy to death or press them, I guess, at various spots. But basically, how they have been bouncing back from their bad performances is putting more of the ball at Darwin's feet. And that's not a bad plan at all. I do question how sustainable it's going to end up being over the course of the season.
How do you think Ache changes this team and that midfield balance?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how he fits, Wiebe. They re-signed Coco Carrasquilla. Well, they bought him outright, and Coco Carrasquilla is really good, really, really good. He's but like Ache, he's a number 8. Neither of those guys is like a hard man ball winner who habitually shrinks the field, and a Diego Chara type, right? Like the type of guy that I think most great MLS teams need. Now you could play them with Matias Vera behind them. Vera is that type of guy, though he hasn't been doing it extraordinarily well. But I think if you play him behind 2 number 8s at that level, then I think that could actually work pretty well in a 4-3-3. The problem is then, what do you do with Darwin Quintero? Do you put him as an inverted winger in on the left side of that 4-3-3? I mean, okay, but then your left back is not going to be able to overlap because Darwin doesn't defend. And then you're going to end up asking one of your 8s, whether it's Ache or Carrasquilla, to flare out wide and provide sort of like overlapping runs on that side, almost like how the U.S. play under Greg Berhalter, where often you'll see left central midfield flare out wide and occupy the wide left channel. So there's no snug fit that I see. That said, Houston for a decade now has been a team that we've looked at and said they just don't have enough talent. That is getting to be less true as these windows move on, and it'll be even less true when Ache gets there. But I still don't know exactly how it all fits.
Paulo Nagamura putting a team in his image a little bit here. Also, I have to ask you, who did it better, Thoril Farson or Mario Balotelli?
Well, I'm going to go with Mario on that one just because of the finish. Thor, that was a nice first goal for Thor.
I'll take Tyler Pasher in this scenario personally. Give me Tyler Pasher. That's the Houston Dynamo. Let's keep it rolling to number 14. Tight in these power rankings. New England Revolution. They're up 2 spots from 16. Adam Buksa has scored in 6 straight MLS matches. He is absolutely on. He scored a little back heel beauty. And this one, I personally prefer the Sebastian Lletget scissor kick. But they go on the road to Cincinnati and win 3-2. Late Tommy Mack goal. Roman Celentano unsided, but he will want that one back certainly. Cincinnati, I just have to say, they're winning on the road, but they're not winning at home. Nothing makes sense in MLS. This Revs team, though, Doyle, they're about to have a big transition because it certainly looks like Books is going to be gone. We know Matt Turner is going to be gone. They got Dylan Barrero in, so you have two of their best players, arguably their two best players outside, of course, Carles Gil, leaving in the summer, and they've been up and down, up and down, up and down all year. What do you think this summer transfer window is going to do to this Revs team?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's hard to imagine that they're going to come out of it a better team.
I agree.
Like Turner has been the best goalkeeper in the league for almost half a decade now, and there's no guarantee that this new signing is going to be able to replicate what he has consistently brought to them since 2018. Buxa is, for my money, the best or second best center forward in the league. And while I think they'll go out and spend, if he's gone, I'm not entirely convinced that they'll spend that money well. I mean, like, if you look at the signings they've made since Bruce Arena has taken over, I guess really over the past three transfer windows, maybe it's grim. It is absolutely grim. And that's not just guys who they brought in from elsewhere, but it's also like they made Josie Altidore a Max Tam guy. They gave him a 3-year guaranteed deal, and he's played, I think, about 300 minutes across all competitions.
The guaranteed years is what's looking real silly with that one.
Yeah.
I think it was worth taking the flyer, but it's the guaranteed years that don't give you an easy out outside of a buyout that feel a little bit hasty, so to speak. But there's a lot of other ones here. If you look at the big characters in this team, I mean, most of them came in prior. I mean, I guess you could say Polster's a Bruce guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good signing for them. He drafted Kessler, no?
Yeah, he crushed it in the draft, and he did great developing both fullbacks,
who are just a joy to watch.
They are, and like, so there is this foundation there, but he's got to keep doing that now, right? Like that's what the job is in MLS now. Like, you don't get to keep guys who are that good for 5-6 years unless you're willing to pay them, and like, if you're going to do that, then you have to be smarter about how you spend your money on imports or, interleague acquisitions. And I don't think the Revs have done that.
Maciel, Traustason, Captoom. There's some names in there that you would point out. It's going to be a big summer for the Revs. Transition at goalkeeper, Petrov's coming in. Can they get Gustavo Bo healthy? If he's not running off Buxa, how effective is he going to be? Maybe it's Josie, but Josie, can he get healthy? Can he be consistently on the field and productive? We haven't seen that in a couple years now, despite all the hope in the world that I had for it. And there's some troubling signs despite a win on the road this weekend in Cincinnati. Okay, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get to Orlando City. We got Brian Dunseth coming up on RSL, so we want to make sure to get to Dunny. He's got a preschool singing recital that he's at, and I don't want to miss him a second of his child's performance here. Orlando fans they're pissed, Doyle. They're not happy about the calls. I personally don't think they have a ton to be unhappy about, other than the corner kick at the end that Musa Jite scores on in Austin to even the score. But man, this team just feels Jekyll and Hyde to me. For the first 60 minutes, they're rolling. They're whooping Austin in Austin. And then the last 30 minutes, through their own, errors and mistakes and bad judgment in the case of Cesar Araujo, they sort of give it away. That's been this team in a nutshell this year. Either they're coming out after games saying, well, that was awful, we can't do that again, or they're getting big results that make you think they got something special.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. They've won 4 of 6 games. They're at or near the top.
God, it doesn't feel that way.
No, it doesn't, because those losses stand out. So, I should say they'd won 4 of 6 games heading into this, which ultimately ended as a 2-2 draw. The losses they had, they looked so far behind what Montreal and the Red Bulls are in those 2 games. Like not even on the same planet. But then they'll go out the next game and they'll play well, or they'll be really pragmatic and clever in finding a counterattack goal to win. There has been no flow, and I know that they'll point to injuries, but I don't think Orlando have been more dinged up by injuries than anybody else. And for the most part, they've had all three DPs healthy all year. And that's what it really comes down to. Facundo Torres is a talented young player. He's not been a match winner. Erkan Kara, maybe he'll get there. Maybe he's a David Gosterin guy, but right now he's just a guy. He's just like the 18th best center forward in the league or something like that. And that's not what your lead DP has to be. And then, Mauricio Pereira, they had to know what they were doing when they re-signed him. He's a really very good chance creator. I think he's an excellent tempo setter. He's very smart at finding space off the ball, but he doesn't beat guys off the dribble and he doesn't score. And when that's your number 10, you're not going to just inherently compromise the shape of the opposing defense in the way that we see other teams do. So I think that kind of explains why they can look so good against lesser opposition, but then get their doors absolutely blown off against the better teams in the league. But that's just a theory. Maybe it's just a matter of they don't have chemistry yet. It's all coming together. And 3 games from now, we'll be like, wow, this is legitimately one of the 3 best teams in the league. That's very much on the table as well because of just how bizarre everything with Orlando's been since, February 26th.
Sometimes Poppy's teams have a little choppiness to them.
That's fair. That is very fair. This is not unprecedented with Oscar Pereja.
By the way, big U.S. Open Cup matchup tomorrow on Wednesday. Orlando hosting Inter Miami at Exploria Stadium. All those games on ESPN Plus. So that's pretty sweet. All right, let's get to the top 10. And Brian Dunseth, unmute yourself, Dunny. RSL are in the top 10, baby. We're gonna get you out of here in 6 minutes to make sure you catch the recital.
I appreciate it, my guys. Thank you so much. And yes, you've made Real Salt Lake fan base very proud for allowing Real Salt Lake to be a part of this top 10.
No one allows Salt Lake to do anything, Dunny. You know that. They're allowing themselves via the power of human spirit to rise up these power rankings. Up 5 spots to number 9. They go to Montreal and win. Boy, I got to imagine for you who are so tuned in, who have been around the club for so long, this is one of those fun moments communally to be a part of this club, no? With the momentum around the fans at home, with the results, with the change in ownership. What does it feel like to be close to RSL these days?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you guys. There were some grim days with previous ownership and kind of the transition phase of not really knowing. And I mean, listen, quite honestly, you go back last summer, less than 12 months ago, and you have a head coach who's leaving his post to become an assistant coach for a club in the same conference. So when you think about kind of what has happened and what has transpired and the incredible ownership, I mean, with Ryan Smith and David Blitzer, and I mean, who would have thought Dwayne Wade would be a co-owner of Real Salt Lake at any point? I never thought that would be any type of reality for the club. But whether it's, whether it's, and I saw your tweet, Wiebe, whether it's happening inside the stadium at Rio Tinto Stadium with the flags, and Tyler Gibbons has done an incredible job, the artwork, the graffiti, the marches of the match, the fan base coming together, the supporter groups coming together, the Believe anthem. You're right. It's just a different feel. There's a feel good factor. And if you would have asked me right at any point in preseason, at this point of the year, would Real Salt Lake be in the position they are, having lost over 90 plus games 90 plus game of player injury so far this year, I would have told you you're out of your mind. And yet Pablo somehow has this group, this communal group spirit, believing in that kind of, I don't know, it sounds corny, but never say die mentality.
So what is the somehow? How is he doing it? What is this team good at right now? That's got them, on the fringes of the supporter shield race at this point.
Yeah, Doyle, I read your article, and you're right. There's nothing that makes sense. We're doing this hardcore deep dive analytically, across the board. And we can talk about pressing and statistics and possession and expected goals and all of that. This is one of those teams where I never can read into any of it because, to your point, I don't know what that something is. I don't know how to explain it. I can rub my fingers together and I can tell you that somehow Pablo and Matt and the staff have gotten this group to believe in themselves. They've set a culture and an identity. But even in the game in Montreal, they're down 1-0, and I'm harping about the fact that we're realizing in real time, with kind of their lack of being able to play through the midfield and have cohesiveness and simplicity in possession, that you realize how good Damir Kreilach is. You realize how valuable a guy like Albert Rusnak was. And here I am kind of asking, well, how does Anderson Julio fit into this conversation? How does Jefferson Savarino now play? Is he an outright winger, or is he more of a number 10? And can he be relied upon as kind of that rhythm player that you can kind of play through and believe in? I mean, and I'm still asking, like, what is Johnny Menendez? Or maybe more importantly, do we know what Johnny Menendez isn't? So I can't tell you what it is. I don't know, because I watched this team figure outside of the game against New York at NYCFC, where they conceded 6. I just see a team that wants to fight. It's just for any of the MLS After Darks out there, it's Pablo. They just have that Pablo's mentality from who he was as a player. That's kind of what he's transmitted to the group. And then added a touch of, hey, let's be smart tactically and not try to overplay with who we are, or maybe more importantly, who we aren't.
I think it's so fascinating to see, speaking of Pablo as a player, to see him as a player on the other side of this Rocky Mountain rivalry, doing things that he did in Salt Lake, grabbing certain things in front of certain people, to now come flip the script and be the human spirit like Charman for RSL in these times as they sort of are reborn. It's incredible. So Savarino landed an hour ago, I see. Damir Kreilach comes back when? How much changes this summer for RSL?
Savarino is in town, just landed. Paperwork's done, so expect him to be available for the Houston match. Dami picked up a nerve issue. He went up for a header against NYCFC and caught kind of the underside of an arm, and somehow just kind of jammed himself up. So the hope is he'll be available after the break. And I'll tell you what, everybody knows how nice of a guy Dami is. Every time I see him, guys, he's apologizing to me. He's like, I'm so sorry I'm not playing. And I was like, dude, why are you apologizing to me, man? Like, don't worry about it. You're good. And then Summer. I know they're when you think about the salary cap or whatever, salary budget, right? They're getting pretty close. I'm intrigued to see what happens with David Ochoa, because you're kind of at that situation where you either got to sell him, you got to move him, or you got to give him a new contract. And the fact that they haven't given him a new contract, I think kind of speaks volumes to maybe what the future holds for Ochoa. But I still think that there is an ability to go out. I know they've been linked to Cuellar for months and months and months. But would they have to kind of readjust the roster if they were capable of finding the right guy? I can promise you that ownership is committed financially to building this club and finding difference makers with regards to players. They're going to build it the right way. And they are going to make sure culturally that the player is the right fit for that locker room. They're not just going to go spend money on a player and then find out that he's a pain in the ass to deal with on a daily basis. So I do expect them to be active. How active? Obviously, the market will dictate that. But for the first time ever, Real Salt Lake has the ability to go out and actually spend significant money. That's nothing that's ever been available to them previously for the previous 2 owners.
4 points out of the Shield are RSL, 4th in the Western Conference. That'd currently be a home playoff game to start, obviously. 4-0-1 at home. They're coming back home with a bunch of home games. We'll see what they can do. Dunny, I'm going to let you go right now. Tell me the song that you're going to hear today from the youngest of your trio. Have you been practicing at home? What's the recital?
I have not been practicing at home, but this kid can literally rap any song that he's hearing on the radio. So it just tells you I'm pretty much father of the year when he's like figuring out when the curse words are about to happen, and he drops it from
nice.
I know you got him on that old school Tribe Called Quest. I know that for a fact.
We got Tribe playing constantly in the house. So my boys know the CD collection.
Yeah, the edited version not in there. You're not going to hear like the pane of glass break at a strategic moment or a dog bark. No, they're getting the real thing from Dunny. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Follow him on Twitter, folks. Listen to him on RSL broadcast, ESPN, all over the place. SiriusXM. Dunny, go be with your kid, man.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, let's roll. On to Seattle Sounders, Doyle. A lot of complaints for them this week on the refereeing side. I tend to think that they should have just played better, but they lose 1-0 against the Rapids. It's a road loss for them. We expect them to get above the line. What are you thinking about when it comes to Seattle these days? The shine of CCL has not quite worn off, but they got to be on to different things now.
The shine of CCL is not going to wear off.
Oh, it's worn off
for years.
That's true.
True. If they miss the playoffs this year, then okay, maybe it wears off. But they're not going to miss the playoffs. They had a stinker of a game. Colorado's a very good team. They're not as good as last year, but I think they're figuring some stuff out. Certainly getting Jack Price and Danny Wilson back makes them better. And they were able to use passing from those two guys from deep, really, to kind of open that Seattle midfield up and get into transition more often than I think Seattle likes to see. And, one of the good things about Seattle, I think one of the best things about Seattle under Brian Schmetzer is that they are almost always in a compact defensive shape. And that's whether they're playing on the front foot or playing on the back foot. In this game, they did not spend as much time as usual playing in a compact defensive shape. And they paid for it. I'm 0% concerned about Seattle. 0%, Wiebe.
Can I ask you a bigger question? Do you think that Christian Roldan, what do you think his percentage chance of making the U.S. World Cup roster is as we prepare for camps to open in, I don't know, a week and a half or so?
I think it's really high. I'm not going to say 100%, but I think it's probably close to that for a couple reasons. One is that he's versatile. He could play 3 different positions, though I think the one he plays least, which is winger, which is what he's been playing all year for Seattle, I think that's his best position for the national team. I honestly think that's the only spot that he's like truly international caliber at. So that's one. And 2 is that he is, by literally every account, an all-time great teammate. Like one of the best locker room guys in U.S. national team history. To the point where I think it was a couple of years ago, I was reading an interview with Weston McKennie, and he was talking about how having Roldan on the roster is basically like having another coach. And he's also a guy who, if he doesn't play a single minute, if he never even comes close to getting off the bench, there will be no complaints. And having that kind of flexibility and personality near the end of the roster, that's important. U.S. national team fans should understand that, given some of the the roster blow-ups and the personality conflicts that we've seen from this team over the years. So I would be very, very surprised if Roldan doesn't make the team this November. I will also be a little disappointed if in this particular camp we don't get to see him at right wing. He's been so good from day one of this season, really the CCL campaign. He led CCL in both assists and fouls suffered. He has been so good at that since day one, and he's barely gotten to play in that spot, barely gotten to show that for the U.S. that I will be really, really disappointed if we don't get that out of him in this camp. I'm not saying he's going to displace Tim Weah or Brendan Aronson or Christian Pulisic, though I wouldn't hate seeing Weah played as a center forward a little bit in this camp. And if that's the case, then Roldan makes a lot of sense as a right winger. But I just want to see it there to see if he can become a difference maker for the U.S. in the similar way that he has been for the Sounders since Brian Schmetzer moved him to the wing.
Sounders, Charlotte, Sunday, national TV, FS1, Fox Deportes. That one's at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm assuming that afterwards, MLS After Dark will go live on Twitter Spaces with Charlie Davies and I. Of course, you can listen to those on the MLS Today podcast feed, just like you can the Power Rankings. So if you've jumped in recently and you're like, dang, I missed some of this, full show is on YouTube as well as via podcast on the MLS Today feed. Final team we are going to hit on this show for the Power Rankings is number 1 and still number 1, New York City FC. 19 points from 7 games since being eliminated from CONCACAF Champions League. That means they've dropped just 2. That is since that loss to Seattle on April 13th. Well, loss over the course of the series. That's 6 more points than any other MLS team over that span. This team's just real good. And I saw Sam Stachel's piece come out today about, players who've had a big transfer fees not succeeding in MLS. Well, NYCFC, since they moved on from Old Man FC, seems to understand that equation pretty well. How to identify, sign, and integrate young, talented players, whether they be Keaton Parks of the world or Tyus Magnos, or of course Tati Castellanos as the best case. This team is just so fun to watch. They're super talented. They're balanced all over the field. They might still be just a tad reliant on Maxi wherever he does play. But boy, they are an absolute blast to watch. The only question I have about them is what happens with Tati in the summer.
Yeah, I actually think that they showed in most of April and into just a couple of weeks ago that they're not as reliant upon Maxi as they used to be, and the ability to identify, sign, and then develop those young talents, whether it be via the U22 initiative or as young DPs, or just like signing these guys and using TAM. That's why, and they are I think the platonic ideal of how the league office would like to see this U22 initiative used, and it's because that they've been so good at developing these guys. And when you can do that, you end up with more flexibility, not just in terms of how you play, but in terms of surviving injuries to your talismanic number 10. And doing it while still playing really good soccer. And like, that's been the story for this team. The CCL run was a little bit too far for them. I think the fact that they played in 5 different home stadiums during the CCL span, and suffered a couple of I think maybe too many injuries to get past the Sounders. But since then, yeah, like, they're number 1 because they've been the best team in the league by a mile since then. And you're right. The only question, hence, going forward is, okay, what happens when Tati is sold? Because in this 7-game stretch, in the 5 games they've played, I think the 5 games he's played, I think they're plus 13. In the 2 that he hasn't, they're plus 1. I like Eber a lot. He has not looked like the 2019 version of himself. And while there's some thought that maybe Talles Magno can step in and be the heir to Tati, I kind of think he's better on the wing at this point. So that does loom as a really big question.
So we talked about this in depth on Monday's Extra Time without you, Kaylin and Dave and I. Dave was very insistent that they can that Eber is enough. I am equally insistent that I think they should go out and sign a player if they do sell Tati this summer in that position, or acquire somebody in league, whatever it might be. I think they need another body in there at the very, very least. What do you think they'll do? Let's say, I don't know, let's just West Ham, River Plate, whatever. Let's say Tati goes. What do you think NYCFC's front office will do? Because I think it'd be insane to think that they haven't spent the last year and a half scouting and succession planning Tati.
Yeah. I hope they go out and spend on an answer there. I don't think you can trust that it'll be Eber or Talles Magno at this point. I just, like, neither guy has shown that ability as a chance finisher that Tati has, and maybe Magno will get there. But right now he just looks so comfortable on the wing that it almost, like, you might end up making yourself weaker at 2 spots if you do that. And like, the object is to win soccer games, right? The object is to win trophies. And if you're going to make yourself weaker at 2 spots, you're giving yourself a worse chance of winning soccer games and winning trophies. So I tend to think that they'll spend, but NYCFC is, like, very much charting their own course here. And so, like, and I don't have any insight. Like, I don't have anybody in that front office. I don't know. Like, I have no insight into how things are being run there. So I'm as curious as you are.
I'll be very interested to see what kind of profile that is. Sort of recent logic tells you it'd probably be somebody that on the younger side that they can develop, but who knows? Maybe this is the sort of time where they'll get the rest of the team and say, hey, 1.5-year contract, 2-year contract for somebody more end of prime. Maybe that could work for us. get the most out of Maxi's last couple years as well. But they'll have some succession planning to do with Maxi too. All right, that's the Power Ranking Show for Week 13. Thank you to everybody who listened live. Thank you to those of you who listen via podcast or on YouTube. One of my favorite shows of the week. Great to get Doyle's impressions from Week 13 after missing him on Monday's Extra Time. Go listen to that if you haven't already, and look forward to the call-up, I believe, later today. So a lot of content coming at you, and the Open Cup coming at you along with the Canadian Championship Tuesday night and Wednesday in MLS. The action never stops. Don't even think about closing your eyes or getting a little bit fatigued, because it will leave you behind. Okay, let's take a final look at the top 10 before we get out of here in these power rankings. Nashville, Salt Lake, New York Red Bulls, Montreal, Seattle round out 10 through 6 in the top 5. Austin up 6 spots after a 2-2 draw at home against Orlando. Interesting. Dallas down 2 spots after losing at home. Philly up 3, LAFC up 2, and New York City holding steady at number 1. That's it for us. Enjoy your Tuesday, everybody. We will see you on Thursday for Extra Time. Have a good one. Adios.